Good morning to everybody. Kalimera se όλους. I'll speak in English in order to facilitate our exchange. So 1 week before I would open this panel, of course, with a different introduction. Today I thought to colleagues and friends in Turkey, and it's an absolute understatement to say that the agreement we're talking about today, as well as the whole refugee issue, has undeniably become hostage to internal politics in Turkey and for a long period to come. Kati has already given us her insight about the situation, so please let me only share with you some thoughts on the agreement we are discussing today. In my view, it is an inapplicable agreement, even if discussing some days before with Gerald Knaus, I absolutely understand the rationale behind it. Find a way to send the message that if people pass illegally to Greece, they will be stuck here and return to Turkey, and that only those that choose a legal passage to the West will have the chance of being resettled one day in the country they prefer. The agreement has 3 basic conditions. 1, to solve all the practical problems on the Greek side in order to make the process quick and effective. And I ask, how probable is for Greece to become overnight a model country in what regards organization, discipline, and order? 2nd, to characterize Turkey as a safe third country. Up to now, there is not a single European country that has given this title to Turkey. In addition, we know that Turkey does not implement the UN agreement of 1951 on the refugees coming from the Middle East. And the situation of human rights, I think, will tend to deteriorate in the period to come. 3rd, according to Article 56 of the Greek law of 2016, there are certain conditions in order to characterize a third country as safe. One of them is the existence of a connection of the asylum seekers with the same country. They have to prove that there is a connection to the safe country in order to send them back. Most of the asylum seekers in Greece coming from Turkey stayed in Turkey only for a few days. And let me note that this is not a Greek originality, but in fact is the implementation of Article 38 of the EU directive. I don't want to give the opinions of the Council of Europe, the leading human rights body in Europe, that has issued a stinging indictment of the deal, or Amnesty International or other NGO organization on the deal. Because I think we'll have the opportunity to discuss. I just want to conclude by saying that it's obvious that the objective of the deal is deterrence. Do not use illegal means to enter EU because you will be returned back. If you are lawful, you have a chance to go to the EU. It is simple and it is clear. But as always, devil is hiding in the details. Can Greek authorities deliver? Up to now, fewer than 400 people have been returned. So second question, how will the lawful Syrians that have chosen the legal road be selected? Let me remind you of the so-called one-to-one mechanism, meaning that the EU will accept, according to the deal, 1 Syrian directly from Turkey for each Syrian boat refugee that Ankara takes back from Greece. But I believe what makes the deal most precarious is the word voluntary, concerning whether EU countries will accept refugees and up to what number. And what if the agreement fails? We'll be faced with a new wave of refugees that will be stuck in Greece. But I think we must be honest to ourselves. The problem is not what Turkey is or what Turkey does, but the absolute lack of political will on behalf of the European leaders to deal with the problem. Fortunately, with a few exceptions. And as long as the Orban rhetoric is dominant in the hearts and minds of European citizens, as long as Orban and Le Pen are considered one of us, there is no solution to this terrible humanitarian crisis. And with this pessimist note, I give the floor to our main speaker, who has worked a lot on the deal and has a lot of things to explain and argue, Gerald Knaus.
Thanks a lot, Maria, and thanks a lot to the organizers for this opportunity. I think you raised all the right questions, and they are difficult questions to answer, and more difficult now than they were a week ago because of events in Turkey. Let me just say something about the context that I think is essential to understand what is at stake with this agreement. Let me then ask a question: what has actually happened the last 3 months? Why it has happened? What needs to be done now most urgently? And what would be alternatives to this deal in practical political life? The context for this deal, we all know it. Last year, according to UNHCR, some 870,000 people crossed from Turkey to Greece. This is more than the number of people that Frontex registered crossing into the EU in the 8 years before. So this was an unprecedented number of people. They were not required to stay in Greece. They moved on through Greece, and they moved mainly to 3 countries: Austria, Germany, and Sweden. Faced with this large movement of refugees, half of them Syrians, estimated, but also from other countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq. Faced with this movement, we saw a very strong division in European political reactions. You've already mentioned the rhetoric of Viktor Orban. Unfortunately, the Hungarian Prime Minister not only talked about refugees, he also acted. He built a broad coalition around a few simple ideas. A coalition that brought EU policy on the 6th of March this year to a new consensus. His argument was that the only way to stop refugees, which he defined as an invasion by a hostile army. In March this year, he gave a speech on Hungarian National Day, where he spoke about gain of territory. Their gain of territory, meaning the refugees, is our loss of territory. Where he said that the right to life, by which he meant among the refugees might be terrorists. So if a terrorist comes with the refugees, the right to life is at risk. The right to life supersedes any other right. So he essentially said, let's give up the Refugee Convention. And then he said, if the Greeks can't stop them, let's stop them one border north of Greece. Let's build a wall in the Balkans. With this philosophy that he pushed aggressively since last September in speech after speech after speech, by March this year, we had a coalition in Europe that was on the verge of embracing a philosophy of just closing off Greece. And on the 6th of March, before the summit, of course, the debate was whether the European Union should officially welcome the closing of the Balkan route, which means north of EU member Greece, trapping people inside Greece. This was the proposal also backed by the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, who also, I remind you, said in December last year that the solution to the refugee crisis was to imprison people for 18 months in Greece as a deterrent. Now, this is the reality in March this year. This is what EU governments, after a series of elections in which far-right parties have made major breakthroughs, from local elections in France, to elections in Poland, to dramatic elections in Austria, to local elections in Germany. Far-right parties that said, let's get rid of the Refugee Convention. This is where the debate had moved. So the EU-Turkey deal is an alternative to this. How? It has 3 basic ideas. 1, you cannot solve the problem at the expense of Greece and Turkey. You cannot just build a wall and leave everyone in Greece. Secondly, if you want the neighbors to cooperate with you, you need to offer something. You cannot tell the Turks, stop people from leaving Turkey, you are stuck with 3 million people yourself. We give you a little bit of money, that's it, stop them leaving. This will not work. And thirdly, if you want to deal and preserve the Refugee Convention, you have to look at each individual claim for asylum. You need to find a way to combine control of borders with protection of the right of an individual appeal. Now, what has happened since March? Let's just look at the numbers first. I just give you 2 or 3 simple numbers. On the day the deal was made, on the 18th of March, on the day people met in Brussels, 1,400 people crossed from Turkey into Greece. In May and June this year, the average number of people who crossed each day was between 40 and 50. So the total number who crossed in the month of May was 1,400. So the number fell dramatically. But the number that I think is more interesting for people interested in humanitarian issues is that the number of deaths in the Aegean has fallen from 272 people who were drowning in the Aegean in January this year, according to IOM, 272 people, half of them children, according to the UN, to nobody drowning in May, nobody drowning in June. Now, at what price was this achieved? Human rights organizations were rightly concerned about violations of basic rights. They warned about mass expulsion, that tens of thousands of people would come and then would be expelled. Let me give you another figure that very few people have fully realized. The number of people who arrived in Greece, who applied for asylum and who were sent back to Turkey in the first 3 months of this deal was 0. Nobody until now who applied for asylum in Greece has been sent back. The 468 people who were sent back until 5th of July were people who did not apply for asylum. Now, why is that? Because the Greek asylum authorities at the first instance level, and then when cases have gone to the second instance level, have simply not issued the decision that Turkey is safe for people to be returned. At the same time, what also hasn't happened, which was foreseen in the agreement, and so, just one more thing, the result of this is that Turkey actually received more people back from Greece before the agreement, in January and February this year, and in the weeks before the agreement was signed, than since. 900 people returned from Greece to Turkey before the agreement, and 468 since the agreement entered into force. Now, this is reassuring. Well, not really, because the other thing that was not done, the promise to Turkey and to refugees was, if the flow stops, if people no longer drown, if people no longer pay the smugglers, there will be voluntary resettlement of refugees directly from Turkey. I mean, this makes perfect sense. Why tell people that they should risk the life of their children, pay the smugglers, when in the end you're prepared to give asylum anyways? Then offer a way to Turkey that Turkey actually will be supported and refugees can be resettled. Well, this also hasn't happened. Until now, in the 3 months since the agreement entered into force, only about 800 people were resettled. And essentially to 2 countries. I mean, a few countries took a few small numbers, but essentially it's been Germany and Sweden, which together took almost 500 of those 800 people. So what does this mean? There has not been, as people feared, any violation of international refugee law. People simply haven't been sent back. That also means Turkey didn't have to do very much. The Turks said, send us back the people you decide are safe here, and Greece didn't send anyone. It is true that conditions on the islands, in the refugee camps, on Chios, on Lesbos, are not good. This could be changed very easily. I mean, this is not a feature of the agreement. If you provide better food, if you provide better management in the camps. What is true is that the people who are stuck on the camps, the non-Syrians, at the moment are just in limbo. Afghans, Pakistanis and others, they can't submit an application to anyone. They're just stuck. They can't go back, they can't go forward, nobody pushes them back, nobody offers them a perspective. Which is not surprising. This is true also for the more than 45,000 refugees on the mainland in Greece. As you know, very few of them are able to submit an asylum claim. So what should happen? And what does the situation in Turkey now mean for this deal? I think the position of those who care about the Refugee Convention is to insist that this agreement be fully and fairly implemented. And that means 3 things. It means, first of all, only people will be sent back to Turkey if Turkey is a safe third country for them. The argument that Turkey is not safe for all 3 million people anywhere in Turkey, which sometimes you hear, that's not very convincing. What is convincing is that Turkey needs to provide clear evidence that for anybody who is returned, there is a fair asylum process, they have a chance to get protection if they deserve it. And we are talking about a relatively small number of people, a few thousand people. But Turkey at the moment does not provide these guarantees in a credible way, and it is of course going to be harder now. But we need to keep pushing. This is the key to success. Second, the European Union should send a credible asylum support mission to Greece so that the asylum processes happen faster. It is no good policy to just leave people hanging in camps with no perspective. They can't do anything. Now, this isn't humanitarian. This is a version of the policy Donald Tusk proposed. You know, you lock people up and that's it. And thirdly, those who care about refugee rights need to push that those member states that have committed to this in negotiations with Turkey to resettle refugees from Turkey, do it. I mean, this is the key promise. The idea is, and I quote from the agreement, to break the business model of smugglers and to offer migrants an alternative to putting their lives at risk. The EU and Turkey decide on this deal. Now, that alternative to putting your life at risk will not be offered if 200 people get resettled in a month. Now, why is this so important? Because there's no good alternative. The alternative to this failing is a return to the Viktor Orban strategy of a wall in the Balkans. The country that would suffer the most from this is Greece. Essentially, the EU's backup plan at the moment, and this is not just a few governments, that's most of the 28 governments, the EU backup plan is to turn Greece into a version of the Australian strategy with the Pacific island of Nauru. You have an island, you give Greece some money, humanitarian support, and then everybody gets locked up there. That's the deterrence. That is not a good strategy. So what needs to happen is to make this agreement work. What needs to happen, despite the problems in Turkey, is not to forget that Turkey is still today the country with most refugees in the world. Giving Turkey money to look after these refugees, to provide education and healthcare, is a good investment and not a dirty deal. If we fail, and that's my last point, if we fail to show that you can combine control of borders with respect for the Refugee Convention, that you can combine control of movements of large numbers of people with resettlement, if we fail at this, the only ones who will win will be those like Viktor Orban who say that the right to life and the right to protect your borders trumps every other right. And that will definitely be the end of the Refugee Convention in Europe. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I think Gerald Knaus gave us strong arguments in support of the deal. So I think we should open up the discussion with our other panelists. And I would like the comments of Katalin Piri from the European Parliament. Kati. Let me note it would be good for you to have interventions of about 2 to 3 minutes in order to have the opportunity then to discuss with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start immediately. I think I agree with many things that were said by Gerald Knaus. I think the success of the deal is the numbers are down, which of course caused not only a huge EU division, but I think also when we'll be speaking with the mayors here in Greece, a big relief for a lot of people. The lives for refugees in Turkey definitely improved. The question is to which extent, but certainly that is there, and no drownings. But of course it's relative, because we see on other routes the drownings are there, and we also see that of course the border has been closed now from Syria to all the neighboring countries. So we cannot just see at the drownings on the Aegean, but yes, this is the positive thing. I think the negative thing is no legal routes for refugees. That was, in my idea, the purpose of this deal, was to close down the illegal routes and open up the legal ones. It hasn't been opened. And I think the biggest political problem now is that European leaders think that the problem is solved. And because of that, the political willingness, which was there a couple of months ago to do large-scale resettlement, has completely vanished. We even see, not just that, but we even see that people are saying this should now be the model to do deals with countries like Libya. Well, we have been discussing quickly some human rights concerns in Turkey, but I don't even want to start about human rights concerns we would have, of course, when this deal is duplicated to other countries. Very quickly on what I think could happen now is, of course, the question, is Turkey a safe country and a safe third country? This is very relevant, even more after what happened. Also, the shooting at the borders is something that I think we cannot ignore, even if it's happening at a small scale. There are refugees being shot by Turkish border guards. Visa liberalization, what's in it for Turkey in the accession process, is of course, after everything unfolding now, more and more unlikely to happen in the coming months. And I think also the tension between Greece and Turkey can increase with these 8 coup plotters here in here in Greece, whether they will be returned or not. And one last point, I think it's a good question. I think the Turkish government will certainly now push more that money is given also to them and to local authorities and not just to NGOs. And I think this would be a very legitimate thing. I think we should stop the one-to-one, which was wrong from the beginning. I know, Gerald, it was not your idea. It came in through my party leader. I don't think that's how we should deal with a humanitarian crisis and start the resettlement. If not, I'm very worried about the future of the deal and the future also for all the refugees here in Greece and in Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kati. So our next speaker is Lefteris Papagiannakis, Athens City Council and President of the Athens Council Department for Immigrants.
Thank you. Actually, I'm Vice Mayor on Refugee and Migrants Affairs in 3 months. The deal will not work. It's impossible for this deal to work. You made some convincing points. If I didn't know the reality, I would agree with you. But unfortunately, we are discussing about the situation from now on. We're not looking at what happened before. The EU was very late. We let things get to the final point, and of course, this deal was the only plausible solution. I agree. It was a very good deal at the moment, but we didn't do anything before. So, yes, this is a very good deal if you take into account what happened now. The numbers have an internal truth. That's a good thing, yes, but politically this deal will cost, and we see it now. You have 28 member states giving the keys to an issue to one country. Yes, it's Greece and Turkey who are involved in this reality, and they have history, but it could have been, I don't know, South Africa or Burundi or whatever country. 28 member states decided to give the keys to the solution to one. This is absurd. Just a few numbers from the other side. 65.3 million people were displaced in 2015. From those people, 1,200,000 came into Europe. That's nothing. That's 2%. And we had the European Union, doing the things it did because of 1 million people. And you have countries who have 30% of refugees as a population doing, the best they can. And yeah, this is another reality for numbers. So yes, numbers are down, but in my view, that doesn't mean anything. Already the islands are almost at full capacity. So at some point we will have to bring people from the islands into the mainland, and you will have in the mainland people before the 20th of March, people after the 20th of March with different statuses and very difficult to handle them and manage them. The same will apply for Europe at some point, for the rest of Europe, because we are part also of the European Union. Another element is that people who move are like water. Trying to stop them is impossible. They will find a way to go through. We see that. We have people crossing the border even now, illegally. Smugglers are asking for more money because it's more difficult to take people through, but they do it. And I know that they can do it, and that we have people going into Germany even now. So I don't know what the solution is. Really, I don't have a very good proposal, but we have to see what happened before. So you need to have a more holistic approach. You need to see what the European Union can do. Are we going to have some point a common external policy, foreign policy, a common defense policy or whatever? We didn't do any of this. We just had member states doing whatever they wanted to do, acting on their own, and now we are paying a very heavy price. And I don't think that this deal or whatever other deal the European Union will make will work. Logistically, it's impossible to work also. The price that Greece paid for this deal, as you know, was very heavy. For example, the appeals committee of the committees of the asylum procedure were changed by law not very long ago because the decisions didn't respond to the necessity of the European Union. So the minister changed them. So this is, I don't know if this is the justice system that the European Union wants to implement. I don't know. And it was done through a lot of pressure of the European Union to change those committees because the decisions were not likable because they said, okay, Turkey is not a safe country. So what this does to the legal system of Europe, unfortunately, we will see the consequences much later on, and we will pay a very heavy price. So, sorry, I don't have a very good, a very good alternative, but I think that this road that we have taken is very, very slippery, and it won't lead to anything. So, a week ago, I could stop now, but unfortunately, since then, we have the situation in Turkey, and things are very unstable. So, we are discussing for the possibility for a country that is under accessing procedure to bring back the death penalty. Okay. We should see how we can react in that perspective. The 8 who are here in Greece now, just the day before yesterday, were convicted to 8 months of prison for entering, 2 months, yes, 2 months, sorry, for entering illegally in Greece. That gives us a breathing space of 2 months, and yeah, it can be very complicated, the next steps. So I will stop here without any other alternative, but this alternative is very, very bad. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the question is a problematic deal or no alternative? So I ask now Mr. Michalis Angelopoulos, Mayor of Samos, to take the floor. Thank you.
If we stay on the magic of numbers, the agreement is implemented, even today, 22 of July. Last October 2015, on the island of Samos, 28,167 refugees arrived. That means they passed the external borders of the European Union. The distance between Turkey and Samos is 1,200 meters. We have refugees that arrive on jet skis. There's the good cases. And you see them on the beaches. September 2015, the numbers were 28,442. I have to underline here that the population of Samos is 32,977. Until now, the borders are crossed by 121,000. That means it is 4.1 the population of the island. On the contrary, this July, we had only 36 that arrived in Samos. That means there is a victory of numbers that can confirm the implementation of the agreement. It is true or not true? What we are expecting from now on? I think that I can agree and can disagree with Lefteris Papagiannakis, a very good friend, because I think the European Union is covered under the magic of numbers. We did our mission. We have signed an agreement. Before, smugglers were earning, in quotation marks, were getting $3 million a day, I mean, on the opposite side of Samos. And no police, no control was exercising their duties. I think that the European Union, the European institutions have to proceed and to develop their external relations based even on the amendment of the related regulation concerning humanitarian aid. The Commission has to change. We're not based on Africa, we're based on European rules and what subsidies and European funding is going where or where. We have to define the role of non-governmental organizations, what competence they have, how they can act on the islands, which is the duty, the mission, and the framework of their responsibilities. I mean, with these heavy measures or heavy arguments on policy, we have to, as well, to elaborate soft measures. Education, welfare, medical care. This is the implementation of pure European law and European dispositions. So, maybe this big event, I have to congratulate the organizers for this political intervention. It could took place 1 month ago or 15 days after, in order to see what's the evolution. I think that we risk to violate by ourselves the European treaties. We have to make exceptions of these positions in order to keep the magic of numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the question is the EU hiding behind the numbers, the very good numbers? And we go now to take the view from Turkey. Mr. Mustafa Tosun, the mayor of Dikili.
Hepinizi sevgiyle
Well, I would
selamlıyorum.
like to salute you all with love and respect. I am the mayor of Dikili, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Republic of Turkey, and I will kindly share my views with you. Right across Samos, I happen to represent a population of 17,000 people in the wintertime, and I happen to be the representative of a district where Samos trespassing was very extensive. This was a problem that we faced heavily without any support whatsoever. We are speaking on numbers, but I must say that on the beach and all around the city, as the mayor, I was the one in need of sharing the numbers that we calculated with the immigration authorities back in Turkey, and the numbers that I shared with the central authorities was many, many times greater than our wintertime population. A refugee camp was planned to have been established with a population of prospectively 25,000 refugees, and we alerted the authorities to the fact that Dikili was not going to be the best choice for a refugee camp that could house 25,000 people. We were not against the refugees because the people coming with a refugee status would not have a place to live. Medical care would be impossible to be provided to them because we were a city of 17,000 inhabitants. And just because of those reasons, we said we were against the establishment of a refugee camp in Dikili. All throughout the year, because of these problems, we couldn't provide the basic services to our students and to our local residents. We've tried to do everything within our capabilities. We tried to provide the refugees with food, with healthcare, and with clothes. We were deeply moved after having seen the bodies washing ashore, and the memories of those children washed up ashore will never leave our memories. They're ablazed in our memories forever and ever. This problem started to emerge in the city of Hatay in 2011, way back when, in the southeastern border of Turkey to Syria. Now we are fighting against this problem in the Aegean region, right on the Aegean Sea. And Greece is our neighbor encountering this enormous challenge, and this is a fact that we need to admit and we need to learn how to live with. We are very upset and we are not in the know of what to do. EU knew what was going to unfold. Way back when, in April, the readmission agreements were signed, and in April, EU knew in 2014 what was going to unfold. With a humanitarian point of view, you have to admit to this fact that my party actually signed this agreement on readmission, but there is a bartering going on between humans using humans, and I'm against this. This barter, this negotiation cannot be dealt over the humans anymore. This deal is using humans as their elements, but this cannot be sustained anymore. People are taking their children with them on shoddily made boats in order to run free to EU. With pressure, with restrictions, you can stop these people, but you cannot stop these people from trying to cross over to Greece, because they think that their last hope is in the EU. You can use Coast Guard, you can use the gendarmerie, you can use the law enforcement, you can stop them to a certain extent, but there will be a point where you will no longer be able to stop these people from trying to cross over to Greece as a last resort. Or else nobody would be willing to take their children without knowing how to swim and try to migrate from one country to another. That's their last hope. We have a seashore of 45 kilometers, mainly controlled by the gendarmerie. Gendarmerie would receive 30 notifications when these events were unfolding, and 2 of those notifications could only be responded. I was deeply concerned on behalf of my country because outside the Syrians, we were accommodating groups of refugees without passports coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq. These people were trespassing in cities, and they could only be stopped before they actually opened out to the sea, right on the brink of Dikili, for example. As a solution, this is my personal point of view actually, the Arab Spring has entirely collapsed. Have we not witnessed Arab Spring in that part of the world, the refugee crisis would have never been a reality. The only way to stop this is to establish peace once and for all in the Middle East, or else flocks of people will keep on finding a last resort to. So long as peace is not established in the Middle East, they will get every chance they can in order to use their last hope in the EU. I would like to salute you all with love and respect once again.
Thank you very much. And I think you pinpoint the central problem, which is if peace is not restored in the region, the whole issue will continue for years to come. So this is absolutely correct. So let's have a point from Italy now. Luigi Ammatuna, Mayor of Pozzallo. Please.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti. Intanto grazie per l'invito rivoltomi dagli organizzatori.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to ask you a favor. Let's not use the word irregular migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Let's speak about people. These are people, people with dignity. The deal between Greece and Turkey, which was concluded under the aegis of the EU, is a problem that does not solve the situation in Greece. It was only used to transpose responsibility to 2 countries, Greece and Turkey. European politicians washed their hands and authorized 2 countries to solve the problem. But the problem is a cultural one. We have to make an effort, all of us. And I applaud this second initiative by now, because you want to mobilize all those people who are actually following those people who want to do scaremongering, political scaremongering, and they actually convince these people in order to take their votes. Many Italian people feel that they are in a very difficult position, and that's why they turn against these people. This is something that is not viable in the long term. We have to change this mentality. We have to propagate this culture of hospitality. Having people arriving only in Greece or Italy, having people remaining there, not being distributed to other European countries, is something that will finally be against Greece and Italy. We have to try to understand that this is human pain. It's not a problem for us. These people are a resource for European member states, and if we see them as a resource, the problem will be solved. So what should we do? We should start creating the circumstances, the conditions in the countries which they are fleeing. We have to create conditions so that they no longer want to flee those countries. We have to intervene when there is war. We have to stop war. Of course, we should not intervene with guns. We have to make an effort to intervene with dialogue and diplomacy. All these people who try to flee these countries, which are full of poverty and hunger, are people who would like to have a better life in their countries. This is the only way to avoid this human tide that is moving from Northern Africa, from the Middle East, towards Europe. I would like to ask the moderator to give me an extra minute in order to say two more things. We have those people who say that we should drive these people away, push these people away. We have politicians in Italy who say that. Of course, Salvini, for instance, of course, those people who arrived at the dock of Pozzallo or another port in Greece have never been seen by these politicians. These politicians have never seen the women with the children in their arms, those sunburned people. If they had looked them in the eyes, well, could they tell them, "You won't get off that boat"? In Europe, we have many unaccompanied minors. Children that were put in a boat by their mother or their father and were told, try to cross the sea. It's not sure that you will manage to get across. You might drown, but if you get there, your future will be better. But I will never see you again. So what makes a father, what makes a mother put their children in a boat and risk their lives to cross the sea? If you analyze the reasons, you will realize that we are obliged to accept these people, to contribute to the better future. Because these are people, these are our brothers and sisters. They just speak a different language. They have different color in their eyes and a different color in their complexion, but they are our brothers.
An approach. He raised many questions. Solution is in the Middle East, lack of political will, and the fact that these are people, are persons, and not just numbers to consider when discussing. So now we go to the representative of Médecins Sans Frontières, Aitor Zabalgogeazkoa, if I pronounce it correctly.
I want just to say two things. One is probably the deal or the agreement is not working or is not going to work. And it's not going to work because it's being based in the wrong thesis. This is not a refugee crisis. This is not a refugee crisis. This is a brutal war in the Levant, a brutal war which is continue happening, affecting 40 million people in a walking distance from Europe and from Turkey and from Lebanon and from Jordan. This is still happening, is not going to go away tomorrow. Assas has 100,000 people banging, in the border trying to cross. Manbij is today under a huge, battle with another 100,000 people, locked there. Jarabulus is going to be affected. Raqqa is going to be affected. We have another 60,000 people blocked in the desert close to the border of Jordan, and then all that without, factoring in that we have a big city as Mosul, which has, and the region, the area, with 2 million people, that probably is going to be affected by a brutal war in the next weeks or months. Okay, so Syria and partially Iraq is a killing box. There's no way of deter people from flying war. I mean, there's no way. Basically the thing I want to say is that the flow is not going to stop. So, thinking about the 3 million or around that they are now in Turkey, the million that they are now in Germany, etc., this was part of the past. I mean, what is coming now and what is happening today is a different thing, which is going to, So this is an issue which we need to take into consideration. I mean, we are in front, and I know that people know, but sometimes we close the eyes to that. I mean, the fact that the very good positive news that there is no drowning people in front of Lesbos on Samos, it doesn't mean that these same people, they are not drowning because they are not allowed to reach there, and they are being killed by whatever how is armed actor within the, again, killing box, which is Syria, which is Iraq. And then the deal, if it's working in the way of pushing the people, containing the people inside the crisis area. And this works until a certain point, what I was saying, I mean, there's a moment that it cannot work. People is coming to Europe, not only because Europe is, a dreamland for a lot of people, but also because it's more difficult to cross through the desert to go to Saudi Arabia. If not, they will be crossing to Saudi Arabia. I'm sure of it. I'm fully sure of it. Okay, and I can say, well, the deal which is doing is a big harm to the right of seeking asylum, to the right of looking for a refugee when you are in the middle of a war. And this is an important thing because this we can't avoid ourselves that to happen again. It happened 15 years ago with international humanitarian law. Since September 11, international humanitarian law is not being respected less than ever in the world. And this is having consequences during these 15 years. And I'm not talking about, just hospital bombs. I'm talking about how the war is being, being done in Afghanistan, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Syria, in a lot of places. And this has consequences. And these consequences, which are partially related to the lack of respect of international humanitarian law, give us a precedent of what could happen if we are not now trying to defend at any cost the right of seeking asylum and seeking refugee. So this is an important thing. So I think that the deal has probably based currently in a wrong thesis, which is that the war is still going on and the flow is not going to stop. And second, maybe the way that we were doing is not yet, is not the appropriate one.
Thank you very much, and I keep from what you said that we must consider what is coming as long as this brutal war continues, and not just discuss the situation as it is today. So, our final speaker is Mr. Kenan Güngör, migration expert from Austria. Please.
Okay, thank you. So, when I listen to you, I see when we talk about the agreement, we see many sides, what is maybe working and not working, and this is the normal situation from process like this. But I want to go one step back and look to the mindset in which we made this agreement. I think there are two important points for me. And I think we have two main mistakes in a perception of this issue. The one thing is, and I am not agree with few of the perception to say at first we have a problem only with people who came in a war situation. The broader problem is, especially when we look to the refugee camps, is the 80% of the worldwide refugees are, it's poverty. And this will be the sustainable problem. And we talk, especially the resettlement program also works only for people who have political reasons. We have no answer for people who will try to find a better life when you say we are fleeing from poverty. And in ethical issues, you have it is not a higher ethical point to say I flew from a country, or I flew from a country because I'm oppressed, or to say I have nothing to eat, or I have no possibility to feed my children. So why it is a great ethical problem, it's the first. Even when we solve the problems in Syria, and it's open up to now, the sustainable problem between poverty is there, and we have no solution for this. And when you look to the camps, and I talked this morning with a journalist who were yesterday in the camp, and she said they are all Afghans inside. So we talk about Syria. And I think this mismatch is one point. The second point is we talk about crisis. I think the crisis is a problem, because crises show us to say maybe we have now a problem and we have now to find a solution. This is true, because it's happening now. I accept that we have handled now, but the agreement, when I look to Turkey, it is a crisis management program more, and not a sustainable program, because we try to say with this agreement, look, when we have the agreement with Turkey, especially when we happen to see how weak Turkey is now and what are the circumstances, we know we have a war in Turkey, in the east side, in the Kurdish areas. We have a great oppression now, and now with the happenings in the last weeks, we have problems that Europe is not able to talk and to communicate about the problems with Turkey, because Europe is dependent on Turkey. So we have many high political risks in these issues, and I'm not sure, and I'm not a worst-case thinker, but I'm not sure if the problems will go on this way. Maybe we will have a new crisis in Turkey, and we have a new problem with the refugees from Turkey to Europe, and it is one of the possibilities in which we are facing off now. For me, is the point to say, when we talk about crisis, we have the idea, it's a moment for now, and when we handle it in any way, in the most cases in short-term solutions, we can solve these problems. And we forgot, and you said also, and we forgot to find solutions for the broader problem. And for me, I think we have to talk, is this Turkey and Europe, it's an agreement, it is a short-term solution or a middle-term solution, or it is a long-term solution, and maybe this would help us to discuss maybe for another alternatives in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the 2 points. You introduced the parameter of poverty also for these population flows, and then that we must admit that it's not a crisis, it's not momentaneous, but it needs a long-term solution for the whole region. I want to thank you all for respecting the time frame. I'll open up the floor for discussion, but before, if I can, it's a short comment, brief comment. Okay.
I had an idea coming from that. We didn't add to all this climate change. Climate refugees, imagine when you have war, you have people moving, they usually have the time to move and cross the borders and go to another country. Imagine if due to climate change you don't have any water to drink. You have 3 days to move, or else you die. in 3 days, massive amount of people moving. This is not the solution to go with. So.
Thank you very much. So I open the floor. You want to brief comment? Yes, yes, of course.
Well, just very brief comments on what you've said. I mean, let's take the issue of the likelihood of more refugees arriving just from Syria. I mean, because I think this is today, as we know in the numbers, the largest refugee crisis in the world is Syrians. Millions inside the country, millions in the neighboring countries. And there will be more Syrian refugees trying to cross into Turkey. Here's my question. If the EU does not resettle people from Turkey, why do we think the Turks would listen to anything we say on what they should do on their border? The Jordanians don't listen to us. The Lebanese don't listen to us. If we implement this agreement and start resettling people, and I think the one thing I hope could come out of this meeting, because mayors and experts can push for this, is to say to the EU leaders who negotiated this agreement and to the European institutions and to the governments, the Netherlands, Germany and others, resettle people from Turkey now, because then we have a credible position that we can say to the Turks, look, there is another catastrophe in Aleppo or somewhere else. People should be let in. If we don't do this, the Turks will not listen to us. They will say, we have 3 million, listen to the King of Jordan, that's what he says. Secondly, for the EU to be taken seriously when it talks about human rights in Turkey, I mean, you've all, if you're Turks, you've all been listening to the speeches by Prime Minister Erdogan the last year. He consistently says, we will not accept lectures on human rights by an EU that sees people dying in Syria, that doesn't accept refugees, that doesn't care. You know, he has a point. I mean, he has a point here. He doesn't have any point about his human rights violations in Turkey, but when he says that the EU is more credible talking about human rights in Turkey when it also does something to share the responsibility. So that's the second point. But there is a third point. If we look at the debate, I've lived in France the last few years. And if you look at the debate in France, which accepted very few refugees, you know, the French government said 30,000 is our limit. That's the city of Hamburg took 30,000 people last year. So France took 30,000 is our limit. If you look at the debate in France, and you look at the paranoia and fear of terrorism, which we all understand, we read the newspapers, the idea that there will ever again be an open Balkan route where lots of people will be waved through is a fantasy. You know, the governments in the Balkans, encouraged by some in Europe, not all, I hope, but by some in Europe, will take any measure. They will build fences, they will use people with guns. I mean, we see that already. It's happening on some borders. What does that mean? If there are more refugees coming into Turkey, if the deal breaks down and more refugees come into Greece, we have a horrific situation then where the whole of Southeast Europe will be destabilized, as people will try everywhere to go through, desperate, and there will be no return to the open waving through of people, which last year made this less painful. So I think we might disagree on many issues, but I think on two issues we might all agree. The EU should take more refugees from Turkey directly. That gives it credibility. The EU cannot lock up Greece, which is the temptation for it to do. So it needs to help Greece. And we need to preserve the right to apply for asylum, which until now we have. I mean, this is good. I agree with you, there is a danger. A lot of European governments are prepared to sacrifice this right if the alternative is a loss of control. And look at Australia. Australia signed the Refugee Convention. It co-wrote the Refugee Convention. Australia has a policy of pushbacks before the coast of Indonesia and has a law which says anybody who arrives by boat has no right to apply for asylum, by law, ever. Now, you know that there are foreign ministers in some European countries that say, let's do the same thing. So I think this is where the debate will go if this fails. So I agree, it's imperfect, it's not implemented, but let's push for it to be fully implemented because it's still the best alternative.